In this video, we're going to make a small portable pen for EDC purposes. This is something I've kind of seen on a few videos. Basically, it's just a ballpoint pen cut down to size, and then you can just kind of hang it on your keychain to kind of carry with you. It's really easy to make, but it does require some sharp tools, so you need to be careful. So let me show you the list of things you'll need. First, of course, goes without saying, you'll need some pens. These are just stick pens. They're case mates. This is really cheap. I think I pay like 98 cents for this. Comes in a pack of 15. So you'll need a pen, preferably ones that are plastic and have a little end piece there, because that's going to be really important in terms of having your ink not leak out everywhere. So you got a pen. You're going to need an X-Acto knife or a razor. Actually, I'll probably use both. This is, of course, to use to cut the pen down to size, and this will be helpful to make the hole for the next item that you'll need, which is going to be either a split ring or an O-ring. Both will work just fine. The O-rings tend to be a little smaller than the split rings, but either way, both will work fine. So you need that. And then these are optional, but still important. Measuring tape in case you really want to get an exact measurement of how you want to cut your pen. And I guess for purposes of giving you exact specs, I can actually measure out how much I cut. These are bead files. They're basically just like, they're different gauges, but they just kind of help cleaning out, and they have like it's almost like a file, obviously bead files. These are optional, but they'll definitely will make this job a lot easier. And then if you're going to be working with the O-rings, you're going to need a couple of pair of pliers just to be able to kind of split the ring and put it back together a lot easier. And of course, it goes without saying, you're going to be dealing with sharp objects, so a good pair of gloves are always really safe to have, just to keep your fingers from getting cut. And then, of course, the other thing you would probably need is just something to rest all this on, so that way you don't get ink or scratch up your table. So the first thing you need to do is kind of determine how long you want your pen. Now this one is, let's see, the pen itself, or at least the plastic sleeve. Plastic sleeve is coming in just under 2 inches. Let's say it's about like 1 7/8, but about 2 inches. 2 inches is pretty good. The cap itself will add a little bit more length, so let's see how long the thing is overall. And it's just under 3 inches. So 3 inches is pretty small, and you could definitely go smaller than this. I've seen people that cut it down pretty far to where you can just grab the very tip. I really didn't want to have an issue pulling this out. This is something that I'm not really going to be taking on and off my keychain. The intention for this is to have it on there all the time, and then I can just, when I need it, grab it and pull it out of the cap, do what I need to do with it, put the cap back. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to pull out the pen from the tube. So you got the ink holster, so you just got the empty tube. And what I usually do is I'm just going to cut back from the end there. So I'm going to measure 2 inches from the back. So we're going to make our cut line right at the 2-inch mark. You need to be really careful at this point, because obviously this is something that is not going to be just simple to cut down on. So what you need to do is, once you get your mark, you can just kind of start cutting back and forth. And what I actually like to do is I just kind of like to roll it back and forth, and then slide over and then roll some more. That way you're getting another section of the pen. Just kind of press down on that, slide back again. And you may not necessarily get an exact perfect ring around the pen itself. But what you'll be able to do once you've cut it down enough is you should be able to snap it. Really, really simple. And most of the time this doesn't have a lot of burrs on it. It's actually pretty clean. So now all you need to do is cut your ink. So you just basically line it up to where it would stop. And so for me it's about right there, and then just cut just a little bit below, that way, because there's actually a plastic cap underneath there, that way you've got enough wiggle room to be able to set your pen down. So I'm going to say probably about right there is good for me. And then again with your razor, just put some pressure down and it'll cut really simple. And then of course just make sure to clean the ink off of your blade. So now you take the cap, press down, oops, and there you go. You have compacted your pen into about 3 inches. Well, yeah, give or take about 3 inches. With the cap it'll be 3. So that works really well. You can keep this little plastic pen pocket clip. I tend to just want to snap it off. You can just kind of do that if you want, or you can cut it. It's really not too bad, and yet still the pen is still perfectly off, but it does give you extra space to grab onto the pen itself, so that is something to keep in mind. One of the things I did notice is that if you really want to go through, you could sand the edge here, because I don't know if I can get it focused enough to where you can see. Sometimes it might be a little bit off, just because when you were rolling and cutting it might not have gotten exact clean cut, and you can just take some sandpaper and just sand it off and make it flat if you really want to. The pen stays pretty well, so it doesn't necessarily need that done too much. So we can get to making a hole in the cap to be able to put a split ring. So in these pens, as you can see, they already have a hole at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize that. And it's not going to be very pretty. This is more functional than anything else. But you should be able to cut through these little tabs pretty easily. It's just plastic. There you go. It's cut out. So now you're left with a hole at the top of the pen cap. And then what you can do is you can either get a file or something, whatever you have, if you want to smooth this out, and basically just smooth out the rough edges that were left from the cut. So what I did to make a hole through the cap is you just really need to make one. I've seen people where they do a hole all the way through, but since there's a hole at the top, all you gotta do is just puncture a hole on the side. That way you can loop your ring in. Okay, just to make things a little bit simpler, I'm going to go ahead and start with the X-Acto knife, and I'm going to puncture a hole in the cap. If you have a drill bit, you could probably use a drill bit, and that might make this a little bit easier. I didn't have one, so this is what I had to use. So just keep doing this, and eventually you're going to burrow a hole through the pen cap. Like I said, it's just plastic. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. It will take some time to get this hole to the right size, but just keep at it. So once you've drilled a hole in the side of your cap, you're going to be left with a little bit of extra plastic, obviously from drilling through. And what you can do is you can just take your X-Acto knife or razor, and you can just kind of shave that off. It comes off really easily. That way there's not a rugged edge. And then you can just take your file or whatever you do have and just kind of clean up the hole a little bit. But that's pretty much it. You've got a hole on the top and on the side to feed a ring through now. Now this might be a tricky part. I used an O-ring just because it was easier to set in, and I guess I'll show you what that's like. So basically you take your little O-ring get a pair of pliers, and you can just do this with your hands if you really want to, but it's easier with the pliers. You grab it, see if you can see that, and you just pull it open. That way you have the space to slip the pen cap through. There you go. So now it's through the side hole and the top hole, and then all you do is you take your pliers again and you just push these back together. Now the only bad thing with O-rings is that they will have, you can sit there and fiddle it, but it will have that little weak spot where it could potentially get ripped open. So if you want to use a split ring, if you can find one that's small enough, that would actually be probably a lot better. So now that you have your split ring on your pen cap, you can do one of two things. You can just leave this ring on. This is what I do, and I have an S-beaner on my keychain. I just slide it on there. Or if you want to just be able to really kind of take the whole thing off, you could probably put a little S-beaner on there and then just attach it from case to case or from ring to ring if you want. This pretty much just kind of lives on my keychain, so I don't really have the need to take it off ever, so I just leave it on there. But that's pretty much it. You now have a very compact ballpoint pen that you can put on your keychain, or if you want to put an S-beaner or some kind of a small carabiner, you can just maybe put it on your pack. These come in handy. This isn't really going to last you a whole lot because obviously the bad thing about this is that you've essentially cut the writing length of time that you can use the pen in half, because you've got all this wasted ink now. Now, if you really want to get, if you really want to not waste your ink, you could always try to pull out the actual ink cartridge, or the little tip that has the ballpoint on it, but I'm not going to bother with that. These pens were really inexpensive, and the purpose of this is just to have something to carry with me that's not going to take up a lot of space in my pack. So this is the full-size pen. This is the small pen. I just cut it from the back of the pen forward. This is a simple little project. Take some tools and just be careful, not to cut yourself. And of course, if you're going to be using a knife versus a razor blade, then just be aware you're going to get ink on it. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content that you're seeing, and I will see you next time.